Hello everyone, and welcome back to Revisiting Archive, a channel where we explore the fascinating history of the world. This is the 14th installment in our Spanish history series. In this video, we will talk about the Spanish-American War and the decline of Spain's overseas empire. This was a war that took place in 1898 between Spain and the United States and resulted in Spain losing most of its remaining colonies in the Americas and the Pacific. We will discuss how it started, who were the key personalities involved, what were the factors that led to Spain's defeat, and what were the consequences of war for both countries. Let's begin. How did the Spanish-American War start? Well, it all started with Cuba, a Spanish colony that had been fighting for its independence since 1868. Cuba was one of Spain's most valuable and profitable colonies, producing sugar, tobacco, and coffee. However, it was also one of the most oppressed and exploited ones, suffering from high taxes, corruption, slavery, and repression. The Cuban rebels, led by José Martí and Antonio Maceo, waged a guerrilla war against the Spanish colonial authorities, who responded with brutal measures such as concentration camps, executions, and torture. The Cuban struggle for independence attracted the attention and sympathy of many Americans, who saw Cuba as a fellow republic fighting against a tyrannical empire. The American public was also influenced by the sensationalist newspapers that engaged in yellow journalism, which exaggerated and distorted the facts to stir up anti-Spanish sentiment. Some of these newspapers were owned by William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, who competed for readership and profits by publishing lurid stories and images of Spanish atrocities in Cuba. The American government, led by President William McKinley, initially tried to avoid direct intervention in Cuba, hoping that Spain would grant Cuba more autonomy and reforms. However, the situation changed when two incidents occurred that outraged the American public and pushed the country towards war. The first incident was the publication of the Delorme letter in February 1898. This was a private letter written by Enrique Dupuy Delorme, the Spanish ambassador to the United States, to a friend in Cuba. In the letter, Delorme criticized McKinley as a weak and indecisive leader who was catering to the public opinion. The letter was stolen by a Cuban agent and leaked to Hearst's newspaper, which published it with a provocative headline, "The worst insult to the United States in its history." The letter caused a diplomatic scandal and forced Delorme to resign. The second incident was the sinking of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor on February 15, 1898. The Maine was a battleship that had been sent to Cuba to protect American citizens and interests after anti-Spanish riots broke out in Havana. The ship exploded and sank, killing 266 sailors. The cause of the explosion was unclear, but many Americans blamed Spain for sabotaging the ship. The newspapers fueled this suspicion with headlines such as "Remember the Maine," "To hell with Spain," the public demanded revenge and war. McKinley tried to calm down the situation by asking Spain for an armistice with Cuba and an investigation into the Maine incident. However, Spain refused to comply with all of McKinley's demands, and on April 11, 1898, McKinley asked Congress for authorization to use forces against Spain. Congress agreed and declared war on April 25th, retroactive to April 21. The Spanish-American War involved several key personalities on both sides. On the Spanish side, King Alfonso XIII, though the nominal ruler of Spain, was just 12 years old when he inherited the throne in 1886, ruling under the regency of his mother Maria Cristina until 1902. Prime Minister Praxedes Mateo Sagasta, leader of the Liberal Party, was a prominent Spanish politician who attempted to negotiate a peaceful solution with the United States, but failed to prevent or win the war. General Valeriano Weyler, known as the Butcher, governed Cuba from 1896 to 1897, implementing harsh policies against Cuban rebels, including concentration camps, executions, and torture. He was recalled by Sagasta in 1897 after international pressure. Admiral Pascual Cervera, the commander of the Spanish naval squadron in the Caribbean, was ordered to sail from Spain to Cuba in 1898. Despite the inferiority of his ships and the risk of encountering the US Navy, he fought bravely at the Battle of Santiago de Cuba, where his fleet was ultimately destroyed by the US Navy. On the American side, President William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States from 1897 to 1901, was a moderate Republican who initially sought to avoid war with Spain. However, he was pressured by public opinion and Congress to intervene in Cuba, ultimately leading the United States to victory in the Spanish-American War and expanding its influence and territory overseas. Secretary of State John Hay played a crucial role as the chief diplomat from 1898 to 1905, negotiating the peace treaty with Spain and securing U.S. interests in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. He also formulated the open door policy, advocating free trade and equal access to China. Commodore George Dewey, commander of the U.S. Naval Squadron in the Pacific, led a surprise attack on the Spanish fleet at Manila Bay in the Philippines on 1st May 1898, destroying the Spanish ships without losing a single American sailor. He also supported Filipino rebels led by Emilio Aguinaldo, who declared independence from Spain. Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, the Assistant Secretary of the Navy and the leader of the Rough Riders, a volunteer cavalry unit, fought in Cuba. He resigned from his post to join the war and became famous for leading the charge up San Juan Hill on July 1, 1898. Later, he served as the 26th President of the United States from 1901 to 1909. The factors contributing to Spain's loss of overseas territories were multifaceted. Spain faced military inferiority with outdated and poorly equipped forces compared to the modern weaponry and technology of the United States, which also had more troops and ships to defend its vast empire stretching from Cuba to the Philippines. Political instability plagued Spain, with internal conflicts and corruption weakening its government, while its colonies demanded more autonomy and rights. Spain's economy, dependent on colonies for raw materials and markets, suffered due to the high taxes and tariffs, leading to resentment and poverty among the colonists. Inflation, debt, and trade deficits further reduced Spain's resources and revenues. Morally, Spain's reputation suffered as it employed harsh treatment in its colonies, especially Cuba, where atrocities against rebels and civilians drew international condemnation. The Spanish-American War had profound consequences. For Spain, it marked the end of its overseas empire and great power status, losing most of its remaining colonies in America and Asia to the United States, along with a substantial indemnity payment. The war also triggered a political and social crisis in Spain known as the Disaster of 1998, leading to a series of reforms and revolutions aimed at modernizing and democratizing the nation. On the other hand, for the United States, it heralded the nation's emergence as a global power and imperialist force, gaining new territories and markets in America and Asia. The United States asserted its influence and interests in various regions, including Cuba and the Philippines. The war boosted the confidence and prestige of the United States, showcasing its military and diplomatic prowess to the world. In conclusion, the Spanish-American War stands as a pivotal moment in history that reshaped the destinies of Spain and the United States. It began with the aspirations of Cuban rebels for independence and was fueled by sensationalist journalism, diplomatic crises, and the sinking of the USS Marine. The war featured a cast of key personalities from King Alfonso XIII and Prime Minister Praxed Mateo Sagasta on the Spanish side to President William McKinley and figures like Theodore Roosevelt on the American side. Spain's defeat can be attributed to factors including military inferiority, political instability, economic decline, and moral isolation. The consequences were profound, marking the end of Spain's colonial empire and the rise of the United States as a global power with new territories and influence. As we reflect on this historical conflict, it's a reminder of the complex interplay of politics, diplomacy, and human aspirations. The legacy of the Spanish-American War continues to shape the world we live in today. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of history on Revisiting Archive. If you did, then please like, share, and subscribe for more captivating journeys throughout the annals of time. Until next time, may the lessons of the past inspire us for a brighter future. And, as always, keep revisiting the archive.